The river ran cold and clear through the high Montana pines, a silver scar cutting through the earth. The wind carried the smell of smoke, faint and far, the kind of scent that warned a person they weren't alone anymore. For Mara Ellison, loneliness had become her only friend. 3 winters had passed since she'd come to the mountains, bringing little more than a mule, a rifle, and the kind of silence that follows after too much heartbreak. The land didn't ask questions. It only demanded she keep moving, chopping wood, mending fences, tending the fire. In return, it kept her secrets. That evening, the sky turned the color of bruised lilac as snow began to fall. Mara stepped onto her porch, her shawl drawn close, and saw a thin line of smoke rising from across the valley. Someone else was out there, someone who didn't belong to this quiet. She stayed there long after the cold bit through her boots. Then came the sound. Hooves slow and heavy on the frozen trail, her breath caught. No one came up this far unless they were lost or running from something worse. Out of the dark stepped a tall man on a worn-out horse. His coat was dusted white with snow, his face half hidden under a wide hat. The horse snorted steam into the air, ribs showing through a thin hide. He stopped at her gate and lifted his head. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and rough. "Didn't mean to intrude. Just need a place dry enough to make it through the night." Mara didn't answer at first. Her rifle rested against her hip. The man didn't reach for a weapon, didn't even flinch. He just sat there, patient as stone. Finally, she said, "You can tie your horse by the shed. There's hay. That's all." "That's enough," he said simply. He dismounted, moved slow and steady. No swagger, no show. The kind of man who'd lived through too much to waste energy, pretending to be more than he was. When he finished, he stood near the porch again. Snow melted in his dark beard, and his eyes, grey, watchful, flicked to her face. "Name's Cole Tanner," he said. "Used to drive cattle down south. Got caught in the storm up the pass." Mara nodded. "You're lucky you made it down alive." "Wouldn't say lucky," he murmured, "just stubborn." She almost smiled, then caught herself. He looked cold, hungry and far from dangerous, but she knew better than to trust quick judgments. Still, something in his tone, that calm steadiness, reminded her of the way the river sounded when it wasn't frozen. Slow, sure, endless. She opened the door. "Come in, you can warm yourself. Just don't ask for more." He stepped inside, quiet as the falling snow. By the firelight, he looked even more worn, lines carved deep into his face, eyes rimmed with dust and fatigue. She poured him a tin cup of coffee, black and strong. "You live up here alone?" he asked. "I prefer it," she said. He studied her for a moment. "That ain't what I asked." Her jaw tightened. "I manage." He nodded once, accepting that answer like a man who knew not to press. They sat in silence, the storm whispering against the roof. When Mara finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost ashamed. "I'm not pretty," she said. Cole looked up, eyes steady. "That's fine," he said after a moment. "I need honest, not fancy." The fire popped. The words hung there, heavy as the snow outside. And for the first time in 3 winters, Mara Ellison felt the silence inside her shift. Not gone, but no longer empty. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, and 2 lonely souls shared a roof while the mountain buried itself in white. By morning, the mountains were gone, swallowed whole by white. Snow drifted up to the windowsills, muting the world until even the sound of the river disappeared beneath it. Mara stood at the door, breath fogging the glass, watching the blizzard devour the last trace of trail. The stranger, Cole Tanner, if I was still there, seated by the hearth where he'd fallen asleep in his coat, hat tipped low over his eyes. The fire had burned down to embers, and the room was cold again. She thought about waking him, then didn't. There was something steadying about his stillness, like he'd been built from the same quiet stone as the mountain itself. By noon, the storm hadn't eased. Cole woke, stretched, and went straight to helping her without being asked. He hauled wood, stoked the fire, even repaired the latch on the back door that the wind had split the night before. Mara didn't thank him. She wasn't used to sharing space, not with a man, not with anyone. Still, she watched him out of the corner of her eye, the way his shoulders moved under his coat, the way he worked without noise or pride. At midday, she set a pot of stew on the stove, venison and potatoes, her last from the root cellar. Cole looked up from the table. "You sure I'm not taking what you need?" She met his gaze. "If I didn't want you to have it, you wouldn't. He smiled, small and surprised. Fair enough. They ate in silence. Outside, the wind screamed across the ridges. Inside, the fire filled the room with a slow orange calm. When she asked where he came from, his answer was brief. Used to ride for the Circle T long drive down to Utah every spring. Boss died, ranch got sold. I just kept moving. She nodded. You got family somewhere? He shook his head. Used to. The words held finality, like he'd buried more than just people. After a long pause, Cole asked, What about you, Miss Ellison? What brought you all the way up here? Mara hesitated, fingers tightening on her cup. I prefer quiet, she said. That's not a reason, he said softly. It's the only one I've got. He studied her face, then really looked. Not like a man trying to find beauty, like one trying to understand the shape of pain. She turned away, pretending to tend the stew. By evening, the storm deepened. The door rattled in its frame, snow seeping through the cracks. Cole rose, checking the roofline, then set another log on the fire. You ever get snowed in this bad before? He asked. Once, she said. The second winter I came here. I thought I'd die. I didn't. He gave a low chuckle. Guess the mountain knows who it can't kill. She glanced at him, half a smile on her lips. You talk like a man who's been trying to get killed for a while. Cole's eyes darkened, but he didn't deny it. Maybe, he said. But the mountain didn't let me neither. The silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. It was alive. Cautious, heavy with something unspoken. When night came, the wind howled hard enough to shake the walls. Mara lit another lantern and handed it to him. So you can sleep in the corner by the stove. The floor's warmer there. He nodded. You sure? I can bunk in the shed. You'd freeze before dawn, she said simply. I don't want a corpse on my doorstep. That earned her a quiet laugh. Fair enough, ma'am. Later, when she blew out her lamp, she lay awake listening to the storm and the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing across the room. For 3 winters, she'd lived with nothing but wind, water, and silence. Now there was something else. Something that didn't belong here, but didn't feel wrong either. When she finally drifted to sleep, she dreamed of the river thawing and a man's voice saying, I need honest, not fancy. By the 3rd morning, the storm had spent itself. The world outside lay still and white, like a canvas no one had dared touch. Mara stood on the porch, boots sinking deep into snow, breath curling like smoke. For the first time in days, she could hear the river again, muffled under ice, whispering its slow thaw. Cole joined her, pulling on his gloves, squinting into the light that bounced sharp off the drifts. Looks like the mountain's holding its breath, he said. It always does, she replied. It waits to see who'll last. They shared a quiet moment, 2 silhouettes against a horizon of white. The world had reset itself overnight, clean, empty, merciless. Cole stepped down from the porch, boots crunching through the snow. Gonna check the shed. Make sure the horses still got legs under him. Mara nodded, but something caught her eye before he reached the corral. Tracks, faint but fresh, leading down from the northern ridge. Not elk, not deer, too straight, too deliberate. Her stomach turned to ice. Cole, she called. He looked up, followed her gaze, then walked closer, studying the prints. He crouched, touched the edge of one with a gloved finger. Boots, he said flatly. 2 sets. Came through sometime after dawn. Mara's pulse quickened. No one passes through this way. Not unless... They're looking for something, he finished. They followed the tracks to the edge of the tree line, where the snow grew deep and blue with shadow. There, Cole found what she hadn't seen, hoof marks half filled with snow. Whoever had come this way hadn't been on foot the whole time. They were riding, he muttered. 1 horse. Maybe 2. 1 light, 1 heavy. Could be hunters, Mara offered, though her voice lacked conviction. Could be, Cole said. But hunters don't ride this high without a reason. He looked at her then, eyes sharp, reading the tension she hadn't meant to show. You expecting company, Mara? Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked away, back toward the cabin. No, she said finally. Not anymore. That not anymore hung there between them. Heavy as the snow on the eaves. They spent the rest of the morning securing the place, Cole reinforcing the shutters, Mara checking her rifle, laying more wood by the hearth. The tracks faded by noon, buried under a thin new dusting, but their presence lingered like a warning. Inside, the air felt tighter. Cole worked in silence until she finally spoke. I came up here 3 winters ago, she said quietly. I didn't plan to stay. But the world had other plans. He paused, meeting her gaze. What kind of plans? She stared into the fire. The kind that leave you with nowhere else to go. Cole didn't press. He just nodded as though that was answer enough. But later, when he stepped outside again, he found something half buried by the shed. A spent cartridge, dull and old but not rusted. Not his, not hers. He turned it over in his hand, then slid it into his coat pocket. That night, Mara dreamed again, of voices shouting, of a man with a scar above his lip, and of fire eating through a barn while she ran barefoot through snow. She woke before dawn, heart pounding, sweat cold against her neck. The storm was gone, but the world felt no safer. Cole was already up, stoking the fire. He glanced at her, then at the rifle leaning near her bedroll. Bad dream? Something like that, she murmured. He nodded toward the window. Storm's cleared! If those men were just passing through, they'll be gone by now. And if they weren't? She asked. Cole's jaw tightened. Then I reckon they'll wish they were. She met his eyes, grey and steady, the kind that didn't waver even when the world fell apart. For the first time since she'd fled to these mountains, Mara didn't feel completely alone. Outside, the morning broke clean and bright, but the snow still held secrets, and far down the valley 2 riders stopped at the riverbank, dismounting to study the faint smoke curling up from her chimney. By noon, the sky had gone pale again, clouds gathering low like smoke pressed against the peaks. Mara was chopping wood behind the cabin when Cole came from the ridge, rifle slung over his shoulder, and a look that wasn't good. 2 riders, he said quietly, coming up the south trail. They're maybe half a mile out. Mara froze mid-swing. You sure? He nodded. Same ones as before, I'd bet. They ain't hunting. Her grip on the axe tightened. The wood split under her next swing like it had been waiting for the violence. Cole stepped closer. You want to tell me who might be looking for you? She stared at the firewood, not him. If I say no, you'll leave? No, he said. If you say nothing, I'll still stand in front of your door. That stopped her cold. She swallowed hard, eyes lifting at last. His name was Lyle Creed, she said. My husband used to run cattle down by Black Hollow. Cole waited, silent. When the winter came hard 2 years back, some of the herd went missing. He blamed me for everything. Said I'd brought bad luck, said I'd cursed him. He started drinking, then hitting. One night he didn't stop. Her voice cracked. I hit back. Cole's jaw set, his eyes steady and unreadable. You kill him? I don't know, she said. I ran before I could find out. The wind caught her hair, tossing it across her face. Those men, she whispered, they rode with him. Cole looked toward the trees again, scanning the horizon. Then they'll be here soon. He checked his rifle, then hers. You got ammo? Enough, he nodded once. Then you stay inside. If they mean harm, we handle it from the door. Mara started to speak, but his tone left no room for argument. He was calm, too calm, the kind of man who'd seen gunfire before and learned not to flinch. By the time the riders appeared, the sun had dipped low, throwing long orange light across the snow. 2 of them, thick coats, worn hats, the kind of men who carried trouble in their eyes. The first one, tall with a scar above his lip, raised a hand in greeting that didn't look friendly. Howdy there, he called. You folks seen a woman pass through? Mid-20s, brown hair, sharp tongue. Name's Mara Creed. Cole stepped out, rifle cradled across his arms but not raised. I ain't seen anyone by that name, he said. I ain't seen anyone at all, truth be told. The man's grin didn't reach his eyes. You sure about that, friend? Cole tilted his head. Sure as snow's cold. The second rider dismounted, scanning the cabin. His boots crunched through ice. We got word she headed this way, he said. Hard to miss a woman traveling alone. Lot of hard things in this world, Cole said. Missing people's one of 'em. The scarred man chuckled. How talk fancy for a drifter. Depends who's listening. The tension stretched thin as a wire. The men weren't convinced. One of them stepped toward the porch, and that's when the door behind Cole opened. Mara's voice came low, steady. Turn around, both of you. The riders froze, realizing she had a rifle pointed square at their backs. Her hands didn't shake. Easy now, Mara, said the scarred man. Lyle's old foreman, Kern Duffy. Ain't no need for this. There's plenty need, she said. Last time I saw your faces, you were laughing while he... Her throat caught, but she steadied herself. You came to finish what he started? Duffy's grin faltered. Lyle ain't dead, Mara. He's alive. Hurt but alive. He wants you home. I bet he does, she said. He needs someone else to bleed for him. Cole shifted, voice cold. You heard the lady. Best be riding down that trail before dark. The other man spat into the snow. You got no stake in this, cowboy? Then you're lucky, Cole said. 'Cause if I did, you wouldn't still be talking. A long silence. Then Duffy smirked, pulling at his reins. You can't hide up here forever, Mara. Sooner or later he'll come himself. They turned their horses, riding back into the trees, snow swallowing their tracks. Cole watched them go, rifle still in hand. Only when they were gone did he turn to her. You should have let me handle it, he said quietly. I handled it fine, she replied. You think I'm scared of men like that? I used to cook for them, clean their blood out of my floorboards. Cole didn't argue. He just said, they'll come back, and next time they won't knock. Mara looked toward the dark line of the forest, eyes hard. Then next time, she said, we won't either. That night, Cole stayed awake by the fire, watching the window. Mara sat on the floor beside her rifle, staring into the flames. Outside, the cold crept back down from the peaks, and the mountain, for all its silence, felt alive again. The wind picked up again that night, carrying the kind of cold that makes the world feel hollow. Cole didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, boots planted firm, rifle across his knees, eyes on the window. Every creak of the cabin made him look up. Every gust made him listen harder. Mara woke once, saw him still there, and said softly, You can rest. I'll keep watch. He shook his head. I'm fine. Got used to long nights on trail drives. Cattle don't care if a man's tired. You always guard what isn't yours? She asked. Sometimes, he said. Sometimes it's just easier than losing it. She didn't answer. But something in her chest shifted. A kind of ache she hadn't felt in years, not since before Lyle's fists taught her to fear even her own breath. By dawn, the light was thin and blue. Cole went out first, snow crunching beneath him, eyes scanning the tree line. Nothing moved except smoke from the chimney and a crow watching from the ridge. Then he saw it, a dark patch in the snow 20 yards from the shed. He knelt. Blood, still red enough to be fresh. He followed the trail a few paces, prints, boot-shaped, leading toward the creek, half covered by drift. Not hers, not his. Someone had come back in the night. When he returned to the cabin, Mara was already awake, her rifle slung over her shoulder. What is it? She asked. Blood near the corral. Someone's been here. Her eyes flicked toward the door. The horse? Alive, but spooked bad. She set down her coffee. Then they're not gone. Cole nodded once. No, just patient. By midday, the clouds lowered again. The whole mountain felt like it was holding its breath. Cole checked their ammunition. 12 cartridges for him, 9 for her. Not much, but enough if they didn't miss. You know how to shoot. He asked. I learned fast, she said. You don't survive up here by praying. He almost smiled. Fair answer. They waited until afternoon before they saw movement. 2 figures coming through the pines, slow and steady, rifles across their saddles. Same men, same coats. Cole stepped onto the porch. Mara took position by the window. The riders stopped 20 yards out. Didn't expect you back so soon, Cole called. The scarred man grinned. Lyle don't like waiting. He wants her now. She ain't going anywhere. The man's grin vanished. That's so? Yeah, Cole said quietly. That's so. The first shot came without warning, a crack that shattered the still air. The round took a splinter off the doorframe inches from Cole's head. He ducked, rolled, fired once, hit the second man's hat clean off. The horses reared, snow exploding around them. Mara's rifle barked from the window, 1 shot clean and hard. The scarred man cried out, clutching his shoulder. He dropped the gun, wheeled his horse, and vanished into the trees. The other one scrambled after him, half falling from the saddle, blood smearing the snow behind him. Then silence. Only the wind and the echo of gunfire. Cole stood, chest heaving. Mara came to the door, face pale but steady. You hit him? He asked. In the arm, she said. He'll live? If he's lucky. Cole nodded once, scanning the tree line again. They'll run back down the pass. Tell Lyle. Mara's hands trembled just a little. Then he'll come himself. Yeah, Cole said. He will. She turned to him then, eyes fierce and wet. You should leave before he does. This isn't your fight. Cole looked at her, really looked. Maybe it is. Her breath caught. Why would it be? He hesitated, then said quietly, Because once I didn't stand up when I should have. A woman back in Abilene. Her husband beat her near dead. I walked away. His jaw tightened. Ain't walked away since. Mara looked at him, the cold light cutting across his face, and saw in him not just a drifter, but a man who'd been trying to pay for old sins 1 mile at a time. You can't save everyone, she whispered. No, he said, but I can damn well try to save the ones still breathing. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and endless. Inside, 2 rifles lay loaded by the fire, and a reckoning rode slowly up from the valley. The mountain didn't sleep that night. Wind hissed through the trees, whispering like a warning. The air had that charged metallic taste that comes before a reckoning. Mara couldn't stay still. She kept pacing from the window to the fire, her hands restless though her rifle was clean and loaded. Cole sat in the corner, polishing his revolver with slow, deliberate motions. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but tight. He'll come at dawn. Cole didn't look up. How do you know? Because he always did, she said. When he was drunk. When he was angry. When he wanted to hurt something. Cole's jaw worked, but he said nothing. Outside, the snow glowed faint blue under the moon. He glanced up at her. You ever think of running again? I ran once, she said, and I've been running every day since. There's nowhere left to go. Cole nodded. Then we don't run. They waited. The night crawled. The fire burned low and long. Just before sunrise, Cole rose and went out to the porch. The cold bit his face like knives. Down the slope, the snow trail glimmered faintly, and there, small but steady, came the dark shapes of 3 riders. He went back inside. He's here. Mara didn't ask how he knew. She just reached for her coat, slung her rifle, and stood beside him. By the time they stepped out, the sun had just broken over the ridge. 3 men rode up the trail, Lyle Creed at the front. He was heavier now, older by bitterness. His beard was thick, his eyes hard. A long scar crossed his cheek like a signature of cruelty. Well, look at that, Lyle said, pulling his horse to a stop. Didn't think you had it in you to point a gun at me, Mara. Her voice was steady, though her hands shook. You shouldn't have come, he smirked. You're my wife, girl. Everything you touch, still mine. Cole took 1 step forward. Not anymore. Lyle's gaze snapped to him. And who the hell are you supposed to be? Someone who don't like the way you talk, Lyle laughed. You think you can stand between me and what's mine? Cole's eyes narrowed. Ain't much of a man who calls pain ownership. One of Lyle's men shifted in his saddle. Boss, shut it, Lyle hissed. He dismounted, boots sinking deep into the snow. You walk away now, cowboy. I'll let you live. Cole stayed where he was. Can't do that. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Lyle's hand went for his gun. The sound that followed was thunder in the cold. 1 shot. Then another, echoing through the valley. Lyle staggered back, snow blooming red beneath him. Cole stood firm, revolver still smoking. The other 2 men froze. Mara's rifle never wavered. Go, she said. Take him and go. They didn't argue. They lifted their wounded boss and rode hard down the trail, vanishing into the trees. Cole watched until the last hoofbeat faded. Then he turned to Mara. You all right? He asked. She nodded once. He'll live. You sound disappointed. She shook her head. No, just finished. The wind howled through the pines again. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. Cole holstered his gun. You did good. She looked at him, eyes tired, voice barely a whisper. You saved me. He shook his head. No, ma'am. You saved yourself. I just helped point the gun straight. For the first time in years, Mara let herself breathe. Slow, deep, and without fear. The mountain felt different now, like the world had turned a page. That night, as the snow fell soft again, Cole fixed the bullet hole in the cabin door. Mara sat nearby, quiet, watching the light flicker across his face. Where will you go? She asked. Don't know, he said. Never have, she hesitated. You could stay, at least till the thaw. Cole looked at her for a long time, and in his eyes she saw something she hadn't seen in any man before. Not pity, not hunger. Respect. He nodded once. Yeah, he said softly. Maybe I could. Outside, the mountain slept at last. The snow melted slow that week. Days stretched grey and still, the sky too heavy to lift its own weight. The sound of gunfire no longer echoed through the valley, but it lingered in memory, like smoke after a fire that won't quite die. Mara woke early every morning, stepping outside barefoot just to feel the cold ground. Each breath came easier now. The fear that had once lived in her bones felt quieter. Inside, Cole was always awake before her. He'd fix the fire, grind coffee, mend a broken hinge or oil a rifle. He didn't talk much, but he filled the cabin in a way silence never had before. Steady, alive, safe. When she handed him a mug one morning, she said softly, "You could leave now if you wanted. Roads will clear by week's end." He nodded, eyes on the steam rising from his cup. "I know, and yet you haven't." He gave a half smile. "Maybe I'm waiting for something." "Like what?" He shrugged. "Maybe for the mountain to tell me it's time." Mara smiled faintly. "The mountain doesn't tell anyone anything. It just listens." "That's more than most folks do," Cole said. The days passed. They repaired fences, chopped wood, hunted when they needed meat. Sometimes they'd talk by the fire, not about the past, but about small things. A hawk they'd seen circling above the ridge, the way the light changed on the river at dusk, the smell of pine sap warming in the sun. Cole told stories too, and simple ones. About long cattle drives, bar fights, lonely trails that led nowhere. He told them with no embellishment, no pride, just truth. Mara listened like someone relearning a language she'd forgotten. One night, after the last log had burned to coal, she said quietly, "You don't ask questions." "Never saw much use in it," he replied. "People tell you what they want to when they're ready, and if they never are," he looked into the fire, "then maybe they don't owe it." She thought about that a long while, staring at the flames until they blurred. By the end of the week, the river was moving again, ice breaking apart like glass. Mara walked down to its edge at dawn, coat wrapped tight around her, boots sinking in slush. The air smelled clean, sharp pine, cold water, wet stone. Cole followed, carrying a small piece of wood he'd carved the night before. He held it out to her, a small bird, smooth and rough at the same time, wings tucked close. She turned it over in her hands. "It's beautiful," he shrugged. "Ain't pretty, just honest." Her breath caught. The words, honest, not fancy, brought her back to that first night when he'd said them without knowing how they'd change her. Mara looked up at him. "That's all I ever wanted to be." Cole's voice came quiet. "Then you already are." For a moment neither moved. The mountain wind brushed between them, and it wasn't cold anymore. That night Mara found herself sitting closer to him by the fire. No words passed, but the silence between them felt warm. When he finally said, "I'll stay till spring," she only nodded. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. The way she set an extra cup by the fire the next morning said everything. The mountain began to breathe again. Snow melted into streams that gurgled down the slopes, washing the cold months away. The trees, once black and still, showed the first hint of green at their edges. The air held a new scent, wet earth, pine, and something faintly sweet like hope trying to bloom. Mara felt it in her chest before she saw it outside. A softening, a slow unwinding. The silence that had once been a shield now felt like space, wide enough to hold laughter, maybe even a future. Cole was the same as ever, steady, quiet, hands always working. But she noticed new things about him now. The way his eyes caught sunlight, the way his voice softened when he said her name, the faint smile he tried to hide when she teased him about his coffee being strong enough to wake the dead. One morning, he found her out by the fence line, sleeves rolled up, hammering boards back in place. "You missed a nail," he said, leaning against the post. She smirked without looking up. "You watching or helping?" "Depends who swings better." "Then it's me," she said, and drove the nail clean through the wood. He laughed, a low, quiet sound, rare as birds in winter. She froze for half a heartbeat, because it was the first time she'd heard it. It sounded like something old breaking open to let light in. In the evenings, they'd sit on the porch, watching the last of the snow fade into mist. Cole would whittle, Mara would mend or read from an old weathered book. Her voice slow and soft. Sometimes he'd look at her, and she'd catch him, and he'd glance away quick, as if ashamed of being seen wanting something he didn't dare name. One night, she asked, "You ever think about settling?" He paused his carving. "You mean stop moving?" "Yeah," he thought for a long time. "I ain't never found a place that asked me to stay." She looked out toward the valley, where fog drifted low. "Maybe you just never waited long enough to be asked." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe," she didn't press. Some fences couldn't be fixed in a day. As the thaw deepened, they began rebuilding what the winter had broken. Together they repaired the barn roof, cleared fallen trees, and dug a new channel for the stream to water the lower field. Working side by side, their silences grew easy, like two instruments finding the same rhythm. At night, Mara would sometimes wake and hear the creek running outside, steady as a heartbeat. It made her feel safe in a way she hadn't known in years, but with the thaw came something else too. The reminder that seasons turn, that nothing stays still forever. One afternoon, Cole found a letter in town, left for him by a ranch hand from an old life. It spoke of open land, a job offer, a promise of freedom beyond the mountains. He folded it once, twice, and slipped it into his coat without a word. That night, by the fire, he was quieter than usual. Mara noticed. Bad news? He shook his head. No, just choices. Going somewhere? He looked at her then, and there was a flicker of pain behind his calm. Don't know yet. The silence that followed wasn't like before. It was heavier, full of things neither of them wanted to name. Later, when he thought she'd gone to bed, Mara stood in the doorway watching him. The firelight painted his face in golden shadow. He looked like he belonged here, like he'd always belonged. She whispered to herself, "Stay, you fool." But she didn't say it aloud, because sometimes the hardest thing about wanting someone is knowing they were born to keep riding. The storm rolled in without warning. By noon, the sky had turned the color of iron, heavy clouds swallowing the sun whole. The wind came screaming down the ridges, bending the trees and driving sleet sideways like needles. The mountain that had seemed gentle only days ago now bared its teeth again. Cole had gone down to the shed to tie down the tools when the first crack of thunder split the air. Mara ran out after him, coat whipping around her, shouting over the wind, "Cole, you can't stay out there." He shouted back, "If I don't, the roof will tear loose." Lightning flashed, white and violent, and in that brief flare she saw his silhouette against the swirling snow. Shoulders braced against the storm like a man fighting the whole world. She ran to him anyway. Together they lashed the tarps down, hammered loose boards back into place, their hands numb and raw. When it was done, they stumbled back inside, soaked and breathless. The fire had nearly died. Cole tossed wood on it, sparks flying like angry fireflies. Mara closed the door hard against the wind. Storm like this shouldn't be happening this late in spring. Mountains got its own mind, Cole said. Same as people. When the worst of the wind began to fade, Cole reached into his coat pocket and drew out the folded letter. He looked at it for a long time before he spoke. "I got offered a place down in Wyoming," he said. "They need a foreman on a big ranch. Decent pay, clean land." Mara froze. "When?" "Spring drive starts in 2 weeks." The silence between them turned sharp. "So that's it," she said finally. "You're leaving?" He didn't answer right away. "I ain't said that, but you're thinking it," he sighed. "It's what I do, Mara. I stay." "Never have." She stepped closer, eyes bright but steady. "Then maybe it's time you did." He met her gaze and something cracked inside him. "Mara, I don't know how." "Then learn," she said softly. "You taught me how to live again. Don't tell me you can't do the same." The fire popped between them, throwing shadows on the walls. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Cole looked down at the letter, crumpled now, edges wet from his damp fingers. He held it out toward the flames. Mara's breath caught. "Colt," he dropped it in. The paper curled, blackened, vanished into ash. The storm hit again, fiercer than before, rattling the windows. Mara stepped close, laying a hand against his chest. His heart was hammering like thunder under her palm. "You don't owe me anything," she whispered. He caught her hand and held it there. "Ain't about owing." Lightning flashed again, and this time they didn't look away. For all the wild wind outside, the stillness between them felt louder. Cole's voice was rough when he finally spoke. "I meant what I said that night. I don't need fancy." "I need honest," Mara swallowed hard. "And am I that?" He smiled, small, unsteady, but real. "More than anyone I ever met." She didn't cry. She just leaned into him, her forehead resting against his, both of them breathing the same fragile air. Outside, the mountain raged. Inside, two people finally stopped running. By dawn, the storm had passed. The world outside was quiet again, glittering with ice and morning light. Mara stood at the window, watching the sun climb over the ridge. Cole came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Looks like the thaw's real this time," he said. She smiled faintly. "You staying for it?" He kissed the top of her head. "Reckon I am." Spring came soft to the mountain. Where snow once choked the trails, wildflowers now pushed through, stubborn, bright, alive. The creek ran loud again, full of melted dreams and second chances. Birds returned to the trees, building nests where bullets once cracked the air. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of pine, smoke, and coffee. The kind of morning where nothing pressed too hard. Not time, not memory, not fear. Mara sat on the porch rail, hair loose, watching the sunlight spill through the trees. Cole was mending a bridle below, his hands steady as ever. The silence between them had changed, no longer something to fill, but something to rest inside. He looked up at her. "You ever think you'd see a spring like this?" She smiled, eyes half closed. "Didn't think I'd see much of anything back then." Cole nodded slowly. "How you're different now." "So are you," he laughed under his breath. "Maybe. Still don't much care for people." She raised an eyebrow. "Except one," he grinned. "Maybe two if you count the horse." That night they cooked together for the first time. Real food, not just stew or beans. Mara made bread from what flour they had left. Cole grilled the last of the venison. The cabin filled with the sound of small things. Crackling fire, clinking tin plates. Low hum of an old tune Cole half remembered. When they sat to eat, the sun was down, the air cool and calm. Mara looked across the table. "You ever miss the road?" Cole took a moment before answering. "Sometimes, but it's strange. Now when I think about riding off, I keep seeing this place instead." She smiled softly. "That's not the mountain talking. That's you." He looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, "Maybe it's both." Later, when the moon rose, they sat on the porch again. The world was hushed, silvered with light. Cole leaned back in the chair, hat tipped low. Mara rested her head on his shoulder. After a while she said something so small he almost didn't catch it. "I'm not pretty," she whispered. He turned his head toward her. "What?" She hesitated, then said it again. "I'm not pretty. Not like the women you've seen in town, or the ones you probably remember." Cole smiled faintly, shaking his head. "That's fine," her brows knit. "Fine?" He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, rough-edged and true. "I don't need fancy," he said. "I need honest. And you, Mara." He paused, his voice low and steady. "You're the most honest thing I've ever found." She didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened, eyes shining in the moonlight. Then slowly she smiled, the kind of smile that comes from a place deeper than beauty. And when she finally spoke, it was barely a breath. "Then I reckon you're staying, Cowboy." He nodded once. "Reckon I am." The mountain held them there, quiet and endless, the stars glinting above like scattered silver. Somewhere far below, the river whispered its way through the valley, carrying winter's ghosts out to sea, and for the first time, both of them knew. They weren't running anymore. They were home. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more unforgettable tales from me. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. Thanks for watching.